I got one more album, EP, mixtape, whichever one it's gonna be, I got one more. And it's over, I'm going to find my peace.
He had millions of streams, a major label deal, fans calling him Jacksonville's next big star, and 3 days before he died, he tweeted he was scared to go to sleep. At just 25 years old, Lil Poppa had already survived things most people never experience in a lifetime. Bullets that took his closest friends, a chronic illness that kept him bedridden for weeks, street wars that swallowed up other rappers from his city, but the one thing he couldn't outrun was his own mind. In the final weeks of his life, his posts grew darker. I'm lonely. Is it okay to cry? I never asked for any of this. These weren't lyrics from a song. These were real-time thoughts from a young man who sounded exhausted. Then came the message that made fans uneasy. I'm scared to go to sleep. 72 hours later, he was gone. The music industry was stunned. Jacksonville was shaken, and fans were left asking the same question. How does someone who made it out still lose the battle? Because on paper, everything looked right. He had just released new music. He was signed to Yo Gotti's CMG label. He was building momentum. Interviews painted him as focused, grateful, determined. So what really happened behind the scenes? To understand how a young artist with talent, money, and opportunity reached that breaking point, you have to go back to the streets that shaped him and the night that changed his life forever. And that's where this story really begins. Before the record deal, before the millions of streams, before the dark tweets, there was Jacksonville. Lil Poppa was born Janarius Michael Wheeler and raised in a city where violence wasn't rare. It was routine. Jacksonville's homicide rate has ranked among the highest in Florida multiple years, often sitting well above the national average. For kids growing up there, survival isn't dramatic. It's normal. Poppa split time between his mom's place on the east side and his grandmother's home on the west. Two different neighborhoods, same tension in the air. But his mother tried to build a different path for him. Church. That's where he first found his voice. At 6 years old, he was writing Christian rhymes and performing in front of congregations. Not street music, not drill, gospel bars. His older brother helped him understand rhythm and structure, but Poppa had something natural. Storytelling came easy. Music felt safe. His grandmother's house became his quiet space. No chaos, no sirens, just beats and notebooks. While other kids were outside chasing attention, Poppa was sharpening lyrics. But Jacksonville has a way of pulling you in. As he got older, his music changed. The innocence faded, the lyrics started reflecting what he saw daily. Shootings, friends getting locked up, funerals becoming common. The boy who once rapped in church was now describing pain most adults can't process. Still, one thing never changed. He believed he could make it out, and he almost did. But in 2018, something happened that didn't just shape his career. It fractured something inside him that never fully healed. Long before the fame, before the beef, before the shooting that changed everything, there was another battle happening quietly. Lil Poppa had been dealing with a chronic blood disorder since childhood. Some days he felt normal. Other days, he couldn't get out of bed. Weeks at a time, stuck inside while the world kept moving without him. For a kid growing up in Jacksonville, that kind of isolation hits different. While other teens were outside building reputations, Poppa was forced to sit still. No running around, no constant movement, just pain, fatigue, and time to think. But instead of letting it break him, he built something out of it. He turned his grandma's closet into a recording booth. No fancy equipment, no industry connections, just a mic, some software, and hunger. If he couldn't move physically, he would move creatively. That's where his storytelling sharpened. Those long days alone gave him something most young rappers don't have: depth. He wasn't just rhyming about what sounded cool. He was processing real emotions: fear, frustration, feeling different. I'm feeling fragile in a city that rewards toughness. The illness also made him aware of mortality early. When your body reminds you it's not invincible, you grow up faster. That awareness started showing in his lyrics long before tragedy struck. But the blood disorder wasn't the thing that broke him. It just made him more sensitive to what was coming. Because in 2018, Poppa would survive something that most people don't walk away from. And surviving it would hurt more than dying ever could. 2018 didn't just shift his career, it shattered him. Lil Poppa was riding with friends he had grown up with. Not industry people, not associates for clout. These were day ones, brothers, the kind you trust without thinking. Then gunfire erupted. A drive-by, chaos, screams, smoke. When it was over, multiple people close to him were dead. All reports vary on the exact number, but what's consistent is this: some of his closest friends never made it home. Poppa did. Not a single bullet touched him. That's when the real damage began. Surviving a situation like that doesn't feel like winning. It feels confusing, heavy, unfair. He was left asking questions that don't have answers. Why them? Why not me? What makes my life worth more? That's survivor's guilt. And it doesn't fade with time. It lingers. It replays the moment over and over. The sounds, the faces, the what-if scenarios. To make it worse, there were reports that authorities questioned him afterward, adding even more stress to an already traumatic situation. Imagine losing your friends and then sitting in rooms answering questions like you did something wrong. That kind of pressure sticks. Instead of hiding from it, Poppa poured it into music. He wrote from the wound. You could hear it in his voice. Not just sadness, but conflict. Anger mixed with sorrow. Gratitude for being alive mixed with guilt for surviving. The night that could have ended his life ended up launching his career. But that success came with a cost. Because every time he performed those songs, he had to relive that moment. And the more famous the song became, the harder it was to escape the memory behind it. The song that changed everything wasn't made in celebration, it was made in grief. After the 2018 shooting, Lil Poppa went into the studio carrying emotions most people would struggle to speak out loud. What came out of that session became Purple Hearts, the record that put him on the national radar. But listen closely to the lyrics, and you realize something unsettling. He wasn't bragging about surviving, he was questioning it. Lines about wondering why the bullets missed him, lines that sounded like he would have traded places with his fallen friends if he could. That wasn't exaggeration for effect. That was survivor's guilt bleeding through a microphone. The record exploded online, millions of views, industry ears paying attention, fans praising the honesty. For many listeners, it felt real in a way most street records don't, because it was real. That's the twisted part. The most traumatic night of his life became the moment that built his career. Every stream meant more exposure. Every performance meant more attention. But it also meant reliving the worst memory of his life over and over again. Imagine standing on stage while fans chant the song that reminds you of the friends you lost. Success and sorrow tied together. The industry started calling. Bigger opportunities opened up. His name began circulating outside of Jacksonville. Labels saw potential. Other artists respected the authenticity. From the outside, it looked like he was rising fast. But internally, nothing had healed. The fame didn't erase the questions. It didn't quiet the replay in his mind. It just amplified his voice, and with it, the pain. And as his profile grew, so did the pressure around him. Just as his career started climbing, the environment around him stayed volatile. Jacksonville's rap scene wasn't just competitive, it was personal. Crews were tied to neighborhoods. Neighborhoods were tied to history, and history carried bodies. Lil Poppa found himself moving through a scene where diss tracks weren't just entertainment, but they were connected to real-life losses. Old friendships turned tense. Former collaborators became rivals. Social media posts carried weight. At one point, he had recorded music with other rising Jacksonville artists. Later, interviews and songs suggested relationships had shifted. A fight at a mall made headlines locally. Diss records followed. Names of deceased friends were referenced in tracks from different sides. That kind of back and forth doesn't just live online, it lives in your head. Every new song from a rival could reopen wounds. Every comment section became a battleground, fans fueling drama, strangers analyzing loyalty, pressure building from angles most people never see. Meanwhile, funerals continued in the city. Jacksonville had already lost multiple young artists in recent years. Violence didn't stop just because someone signed a deal. Even after Poppa began stepping into bigger rooms, the streets still echoed behind him. Reports described him as constantly alert, listening for sounds, watching his surroundings, hyper-aware. That's what trauma does. It keeps your body in survival mode long after the danger passes. And when you're in survival mode for years, it drains you. He was trying to focus on music, trying to separate himself from chaos. But you can change your location without changing what's inside your mind. The city that built him was still inside him. And as his name grew, so did the expectations. Especially after one major cosign changed everything. When the call came from Yo Gotti, it felt like confirmation. In April 2022, Lil Poppa officially signed to CMG. That wasn't just another indie deal. Wonk CMG had real momentum, national distribution, heavy hitters on the roster. When Gotti puts his name behind you, the industry pays attention. For Poppa, it was proof he had made it out. The kid recording in his grandma's closet was now backed by a major label machine. Bigger studios, larger budgets, real marketing push, his streaming numbers climbed, his monthly listeners crossed into the millions. Features, interviews, festival looks, doors that once seemed impossible were suddenly open. From the outside, this looked like the breakthrough chapter. But growth brings pressure. Now there were deadlines, expectations, a team investing money that needed results. Every project had to perform. Every release had to chart. In hip-hop, momentum can disappear fast. Once you get the spotlight, you're expected to stay in it. Poppa delivered. His Under Investigation series built a loyal fan base. Then came Almost Normal Again. That title alone said a lot. Almost. Not fully, not healed, just close enough to function. He was still writing about grief, still rapping about trust issues, still hinting at the weight he carried. Fame amplified his platform, but it didn't silence the memories from 2018. If anything, it made them louder. More interviews meant more retelling of trauma. More performances meant more revisiting pain. Money changed his lifestyle. It didn't change his mind. And as the spotlight brightened, the posts on his social media started feeling heavier, like someone fighting something deeper than industry stress. That's when fans began noticing the tone shift. It didn't happen all at once. The warning signs were scattered between regular, not new music announcements, studio clips, gratitude posts, then, tucked in between them, messages that felt heavier. Lil Poppa had always been open in his music. He rapped about grief, trust issues, and the weight of surviving when others didn't. But his social media started sounding less like lyrics and more like personal confession. His Instagram bio read, "First we're born, next we suffer, then we die, the end." That's not branding, that's perspective. He tweeted about loneliness, about crying in the dark, about feeling judged. One post read like someone exhausted from pretending to be strong. Another hinted at fear of sleeping, fear that something might happen, fear that his mind wouldn't quiet down. But here's what made it confusing. Right alongside those posts were moments of optimism, clips talking about how there's more to life. One, messages about staying focused, gratitude for supporters. That contrast made it easy to overlook the red flags. Mental health isn't one straight line. You can sound hopeful on Monday and hopeless by Thursday. You can post a motivational clip while privately feeling overwhelmed. People around him likely saw both versions. The ambitious artist building his career, and the young man still carrying 2018 on his shoulders. The title, Almost Normal Again, suddenly felt more personal than promotional. Almost normal, almost at peace, almost healed, but almost isn't the same as being okay. And in the days before everything changed, his words started sounding less like art and more like someone asking for help in real time. 3 days. That's how long it took for concern to turn into tragedy. In the final stretch of his life, the Lil Poppa posted messages that hit different once you read them back. At the time, they blended into the usual scroll. Artists vent online all the time. Fans are used to dramatic captions. But these didn't feel performative. "I'm scared to go to sleep. I'm lonely, bro. Is it okay to cry?" Those weren't bars from a rollout. They weren't teasers for a project. They sounded like someone wrestling with something heavy at night when the distractions fade. Then came another layer. He mentioned trust, feeling judged, feeling like people switched up once the jewelry and success showed up. That kind of isolation can hit harder when you're surrounded by people, but still feel alone. And what made it harder to read was the contrast. Just days earlier, he had dropped new music, career still moving, millions of monthly listeners, or a major label backing him. From the outside, nothing looked like it was collapsing. That's the part people struggle to understand. You can be successful and still feel stuck. You can have opportunity and still feel empty. Trauma doesn't care about streaming numbers. Then February 18th, 2026 came. News broke that Lil Poppa had passed away in Fulton County, Georgia. He was 25 years old. Shock spread, producers posted tributes. Fans flooded timelines. Jacksonville felt the hit deeply. Reports suggested his passing was self-inflicted, though details remained limited publicly. Regardless of the specifics, the reality didn't change. A young artist who survived bullets, illness, and street chaos couldn't survive the weight inside his own head. And once the shock settled, young people started asking the question that lingers after every loss like this. Could it have been prevented? When the headlines faded, people tried to simplify it. Some blamed pressure, some blamed the streets, some blamed the industry. But the truth was heavier than any one reason. Lil Poppa had been carrying layers of trauma for years. The 2018 shooting didn't just take his friends. It planted something inside him that never left. Survivor's guilt isn't loud all the time. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits. But it stays. Imagine waking up every day knowing you're the one who lived. That kind of question doesn't fade with success. It doesn't disappear because you sign a deal. If anything, the spotlight magnifies it. You're the one who made it out, the one who turned pain into profit. Not the one fans look at as proof that escape is possible. That's pressure most people never talk about. Then add the chronic illness he battled since childhood, days where his body physically slowed him down. A reminder that strength isn't permanent, that vulnerability was always part of his reality. Add Jacksonville's environment, the constant alertness, the funerals, the tension that never fully shuts off. Even when you move cities, your nervous system doesn't forget. And then add fame, deadlines, expectations, the responsibility of feeding a fan base, the pressure to stay relevant, the idea that you're supposed to be grateful at all times because you made it. All of that stacked up quietly. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't spiraling publicly. He was working, dropping music, building his brand. That's what makes it more painful. And he was functioning. But functioning isn't the same as healing. And sometimes the strongest looking people are just the best at hiding the weight they're carrying. That's the part that should make everyone pause. After the shock wore off, the conversation started. Some pointed fingers at the label, others blamed the culture. A few tried to turn it into another rap conspiracy. But none of that changes what really stands out. Lil Poppa was open about his struggles. He wasn't hiding behind a tough guy image. He rapped about crying, about guilt, about fear. He tweeted about loneliness. He practically told the world he wasn't okay. And still, it wasn't enough. That's the uncomfortable truth. We say we want artists to be vulnerable, we say we care about mental health, but when someone posts something heavy, it gets mixed into the timeline with memes and promo clips. It becomes content instead of a cry for help. Poppa survived gunfire. He survived illness. He survived a city that has taken many young artists too soon. But trauma doesn't end when the headlines do. It lingers quietly. It builds. It convinces you that you're tired even when life looks successful from the outside. His story also exposes something deeper in hip-hop culture, the expectation that young men stay strong no matter what, cry in private, hurt in silence, perform strength publicly. Poppa didn't follow that script completely. He spoke about his pain, but speaking about it through music isn't the same as having structured support, therapy, or consistent mental health care. Success gave him a platform. It didn't automatically give him peace. And that's why his death hits differently. Because he did what we tell artists to do. He expressed himself. He turned pain into art. He tried to move forward, but sometimes art isn't enough to carry trauma that deep. And that realization is heavier than any lyric he ever wrote. In the end, Lil Poppa wasn't just another headline. He was proof that talent and trauma can exist in the same body. That success doesn't cancel pain. That surviving something doesn't mean you healed from it. He made it out of Jacksonville financially. He built a real career. He signed a major deal, but the memories followed him. His music now feels different when you replay it. The lines about guilt, the reflections on fear, the honesty about crying in the dark, they weren't dramatic exaggerations. They were windows into a mind trying to hold itself together. And that's what makes his story powerful and heartbreaking. He turned the worst night of his life into a song that inspired millions. He gave listeners permission to admit they were hurting. He showed that street artists can talk about mental health without losing credibility. And still, he couldn't find the peace he was searching for. His death shouldn't just spark sadness, it should spark awareness. Checking on friends who seem fine, taking heavy posts seriously. Understanding that being strong doesn't mean being silent. Lil Poppa survived bullets, illness, and industry pressure. What he couldn't survive was the weight of everything combined. And maybe the real lesson isn't about fame or the streets. It's about recognizing pain before it becomes permanent.